Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Today I am actually alone. Tanner should be in this video, but he really decided not to be incorporated just because it was something more that I experienced, with the whole pains and everything that a woman feels during labor. And so actually they might be jumping in, and when I say they, it might be my husband, which is Tanner, and Aries, which is my son. They might be jumping in here and there just because they're in the other room playing. And if you can hear them, I do apologize because Tanner's being a little extra and screaming just to ruin it. Okay, so it all started last year around May, towards the end of May, when I started to feel, like the little symptoms, the little something is going on. I somehow knew, not necessarily knew that I was pregnant, but I somehow knew that something was going on. I was late on my period, but I was kind of in the denial stage of where I was going to get it, because somehow my period had changed at the time and I was really irregular. So I kind of just let it go. On May 28th, me and Tanner used to work together, and for some reason my emotions were everywhere. I went from being happy to sad, from sad to angry, back to happy. It was just a mix of emotions, which, keep in mind that that's how my whole pregnancy was. I just was everywhere. My hormones were just up and down the whole time. But going back to that day, on May 28th, we left work, not in such great terms, but we weren't fighting like I hate you fighting, So we were actually texting. We were on our way to go eat dinner, and I was telling him that something was going wrong, that maybe I should just do a pregnancy test. At that time, all we were eating was pizza. It was pizza every day. I am not kidding when I say that it was every day for dinner. So we would go out to eat dinner, and when we got there, we were kind of just talking about it, and I was telling him, I'm just going to do a pregnancy test. I think it's time. And I already felt pregnant. For those of you that do have kids or that are pregnant right now, some of you might understand where I'm coming from, that you do feel pregnant when you're pregnant. And so right after that, we jumped to Walmart because it was just across the street. We bought a pregnancy test, and we went home. Tanner was always the type of person that would tell me, when it comes to that time, I would like to be surprised. So there wasn't really much that I could do. I couldn't do such a big surprise either. As we headed home, Tanner stopped at the gas station to buy some things, and I headed straight home. I was literally like speeding. I was trying to get there as fast as I could so Tanner wouldn't beat me there. My whole plan was get there, go to the bathroom, take the test, figure out what the heck is going on, and go from there. My mind was not at the point of I am pregnant, but I wasn't also at the point of I'm not. And so I get there, I go to the bathroom, I pee on the stick, and sure enough, my test came positive. I was really happy. I was like, my mind was just everywhere. I wasn't sad about it. I wasn't like, what the heck? Like, I was so happy. And I still to this day remember, that happiness that I felt. So my plan was, somehow I have to surprise him. So I put the test on the bed, just laid it down there, and I went to hide in the closet, waited for Tanner to come. Tanner came in, he saw the pregnancy test, and, we kind of had a little moment. So from there, we actually started, letting my whole family know. Keep in mind that May 22nd, he had asked, he had actually proposed, so we had no idea that I was pregnant. And then come May 28th, we found out, we let our whole family know, and it was like a double whammy for my whole family and his family because we were engaged and we were expecting. So we let our family know, and everybody was really excited, and yeah, that's how we found out that we were pregnant. So if I look down, it's because I have a list down here so I can make sure I remember and cover everything. But let's go to when we had our first doctor visit. we get there, they do the ultrasound, they check to make sure that everything is okay, they make sure that you're okay, they do tests just to, make sure everything's fine. And sure enough, everything was good. And so from there on, I was just hoping to God that I would have a little boy. He wanted a little girl, but going on to the next visit, we found out that we were having a boy. There at the doctor, he told us specifically that I would be having a C-section, I would be having a 7-pound baby, and I would have him January 30th of 2019. And our minds were just kind of blown, like, oh, how could a doctor really know, really, really know the specific day the baby will get here? Because he had told us our due date was January 28th, but then he himself changed it to January 30th. And so we kind of just, left it as it was. My whole pregnancy from there on was kind of just smooth. I did have some sickness. It was mostly at night, but nothing was, like to the point where I just couldn't take the pregnancy anymore. Come October was when it got a little tough, because I was at work and I actually wasn't feeling well at all. And like I had mentioned earlier, me and Tanner used to work together. And I messaged him and I told him, hey, something's going on. I don't feel well. Do you think you can come, and check me just to make sure everything is okay? So he rushes over to where I was at and he kept asking me, like, are you okay? Are you okay? I felt the heaviest pain on my chest that if you know what anxiety is like, you would understand. But it was just so heavy to the point where I couldn't breathe. And from there on, I don't remember what happened. Eventually, I ended up, I'm fainting. They had to call the paramedics. They had to check me. They told Tanner actually that everything was okay, but I still wasn't responding. So they called my mom to go pick me up. My mom went to pick me up, took me to the hospital, and getting there to the hospital, they ran all these tests. They checked the baby. They checked me. Everything looked normal, but the one thing that all the doctors there were mostly concerned about was that the baby was ready to come. And that's when it got tough, because they had to transfer me to a different hospital. Getting there to the hospital, they ran these tests. Nobody could really understand why it had happened. Nobody could really understand what was going on. I explained myself from like the moment I got to the hospital that I was able to respond to the moment they switched me to the different hospital. I kept explaining and nobody really knew. I was in so much pain. I didn't feel well. It really, really sucked. So they kept me overnight there at the hospital, and they still kept running tests. They kept checking my vitals. They kept checking the baby's heartbeat. Everything seemed to be okay. So I ended up having to follow up with my doctor that same week. I believe it was the day after. And we went, and it was probably one of the most frustrating moments of my whole pregnancy. Because getting there, it was... My doctor didn't care over the fact that I was at the hospital. He literally, and I am not kidding, he literally told the doctors, the nurses at the hospital that he had more important things to do than to go check up on me. And keep in mind that they had actually moved me hospitals because they really thought that I would be having a premature baby. So when the doctor told me at the hospital that my baby's doctor couldn't come in because he had other things to do, it was kind of frustrating to not only me but to Tanner as well. So when we arrived at the doctor's appointment, we actually went into the room. His medical assistant came in. He was talking to us what was going on, just little checkups that they usually do. And that's when Tanner lost his shit. Poor dude, I kid you not, was like blank. He was pale. He didn't know how to respond because in no means do I wish this upon anybody, where you feel like you and your baby are not important, no matter if it's something so small or no matter if it's something so big. If you guys don't feel like you guys are important, you guys are not in the right hands. And that's how I felt. I was not in the right hands of that doctor. The doctor walks in. He literally told us himself that he did not have the time to go check up on me because he really did have more important things to do. And which is understandable, you know, he delivers babies. But when a patient is at the hospital due to their pregnancy maybe going wrong, due to the baby, you know, being born premature, how is that not important? To me, that's insane. To my husband, that was insane. So we left it as it was. We didn't, you know, he finished his whole checkup. He walked out, and actually he himself apologized to Tanner because Tanner was, his mind was just everywhere. He exploded, you know, to them, and Tanner had no respect towards the doctor no more. So we get to the front desk, you know, when you have to set up your next appointment, and right there and then we asked for a transfer. We transferred doctors. It took us about maybe, I want to say, 2 weeks for us to actually get transferred to the new doctor. I go in to the new doctor, and there himself, on, I want to say it was my second checkup with him, he sent me to a heart doctor. And him sending me to the heart doctor was because he really wanted to see why all that had happened. He didn't agree to the fact of the way the doctor treated me as his patient. He didn't agree to any of what had happened. So he wanted to do further tests, which to me, that is something that the other doctor should have done but didn't do. So they sent me to the heart doctor. She decided to do further testing on from the moment I start getting all those symptoms again to a week later, right? So it was a week frame of me doing a test. They gave me a heart monitor to just check up to see how I'm doing. I was on the heart monitor for a week. It wasn't the best. It did read some things, some of the symptoms that I was receiving. That test was really good for myself, obviously. A week later, I go back to the heart doctor, turn in the little monitor, and I have to go back in for the follow-up the following week. Going in, she was surprised to how everything that had happened to me somehow cleared up by the time that they did the testing. It wasn't something normal, but after the results came in, everything was completely fine. I was okay, the baby was okay. So what had happened to me back in October, around maybe, I want to say it was probably, I don't know if it was November, if I'm right, or it could have been beginning of December, but everything came back normal. So from there on, from November to January, it was literally an easy ride. Of course, I was tired. Of course, I was getting bigger by the moment, and I'm talking about I was huge by the last month. But by the last month, they start seeing you every week. And as I would go in, by that time, I'm not saying everyone, but most moms do start to dilate. Whether it's a centimeter, whether it's 2 centimeters, but you do progress around that time. And I wasn't dilating. I wasn't dilating at all. It got to the point where the 3rd week of January, when I went in to the doctor, he told me that he was going to have to induce me. For those of you that don't know what induction is, basically they give you medication to start your dilation, to start your labor, to get it going. So they had actually scheduled that all for me because I wasn't dilating at all. The doctor didn't expect me to dilate. The doctor didn't expect anything. He said that we were going for the induction. He said, we're doing this, and we're doing this. So we were doing it, right? We were doing it. We were going to go there. But January 29th came around. And me and Tanner woke up. Tanner was off Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so this was January 29th on a Tuesday. We woke up, we did our schedule, nothing changed. We got up, went to go eat, we were hanging out. And we had actually said, we're going to go out to Tempe to look at some car parts and then come back home. But somehow we just kind of were drained. We were just kind of like, let's go home. So we ended up coming home. And I had a yoga ball at the time because my mom had told me, start bouncing on the ball. Maybe it'll start, your dilation. It'll speed up your process. And it was probably like around 3:30 when I was bouncing on the ball and I got up from the ball. And I felt this huge gush just come out of me. And I started laughing because I was like, oh my God, I just peed myself. There's no way that now that with this pregnancy that I just won't be able to hold my pee anymore. So Tanner had actually gone into our bathroom prior to my, me peeing myself. So I run to my mom's bathroom, change, everything, clean myself up. And I went back into the room and I told Tanner when he came out, like, I peed myself. And so we continue with our day. We got ready to go eat. We were gonna go eat dinner, and that's when it kind of hit me where I was more frustrated. I was more overwhelmed. I was more questioning the whole situation because I just couldn't control my pee, and I just didn't want to do anything, and I just didn't want to do anything. So we ended up leaving. I was like, whatever, it is what it is. I made Tanner stop at my mom's work. We stopped there and I told my mom. I started crying to her. I was like, I can't believe it's gotten to this point. Why isn't he coming? When is he coming? Like, I cannot wait another week because I was already scheduled for the week after to start my induction. And my mom just told me, like, put yourself some feminine pads, put yourself microfibers, put paper towels, do anything just so you don't continue to feel, embarrassed, which it was so embarrassing, but at least something would absorb it versus me peeing in my underwear. And so I did. We ended up leaving. I had took an extra towel to put in the car. That way, like, if it continued to happen, I wouldn't wet the car seat. So we left. On our way there, I peed again, and I was just over it by that time. We ended up getting off. We ended up getting off at the restaurant, and on my way from the car to the door, I peed again. And then I was just so over it. I was so embarrassed. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I was so angry at myself because I just couldn't hold it. I told Tanner, I'm going to go, I'm going to go fix myself, and then I'll be right back. I'll meet you at the table, whatever. I ended up going, went back, sat down. As I sat down with the smallest wiggle, I peed again. I continued to pee. And at that point, I just wanted to go home. I wanted nothing to do with the street. I wanted nothing to do with me eating. I couldn't eat. I just wanted to leave. So actually, our waitress there started telling me, her experience with her pregnancy. She was in labor, and it kind of made me feel good, but it was also very well, my baby isn't coming anytime soon. And I was convinced, he's not coming anytime soon. I have to wait, whatever it is, what it is. And we paid, we left. From the restaurant to my house, Tanner just wouldn't stop making me laugh. Tanner was just making a joke out of me peeing. He was just making a joke out of everything we saw. It was non-stop laughing, and at that point I was so angry because pee just kept coming out. I'm not joking. I couldn't hold it in. finally we get home. I rush myself into the bathroom, you know, I change, I clean up. I didn't want to be in my clothes. I just wanted to be in comfortable clothes. I put pads in. I'm not kidding, it was pads, microfibers layered, just because I couldn't hold it. So we ended up laying down just because of the whole situation. We rented a movie. We started to watch it. And that's when I started to feel period cramps. It was just baby little cramps. Like, none that really hurt. It was just like, it wasn't like, oh my God, I have contractions. No, it was none of that. So I didn't think of it. And I wasn't bleeding, you know, I had no signs of me being in labor. So Tanner had mentioned it to his mom, you know, hey, this is what's going on. Tanner had done his research online. My mind just wasn't there. I didn't really want to look into it. But when Tanner told me, hey, my mom says that you can be in labor now. Your water might have broke. Maybe you should go to the hospital. That's when it kind of hit me. I was like, damn, maybe it's true. So I started doing my own research. And when I was researching, I kept getting cramps. And they started to get a little bit stronger, but they were so far apart that to me, it didn't click. And as I started reading, it started connecting, you know, yeah, maybe so. But to me, the way I always thought when your water broke was just a full gush of the whole thing would come out. You know, like the movies. I never really knew that it was like little sections. So sure enough, what I ended up doing, I ended up hopping back into the shower. I showered real quick, got ready, we got our bags ready, and I told Tanner, you know what, we're going to leave the bags, have my parents take it to the hospital. For if we are in active labor, they can take it in. You know, if we're not in active labor, then we have to come back. They will not accept us because I believe it's 3 or 4 centimeters where they will send you back home if you're not that far. And I kept telling Tanner, like, don't have your hopes up. We are probably not in active labor. They're probably going to send us back home. Like, it is what it is, dude. Like, we really can't do anything about it. Heading there is when I started, you know, like the major crampings. And I was nervous. I didn't really know what the heck was going on. And getting there to the hospital, I got off the car and the biggest gush came out. And I was laughing, you know, because I kept telling Tanner, like, I keep peeing myself. It's going to go through my pants. It's going to go through my underwear. What do I do? And he kept, you know, trying to motivate me, you know, telling me, you're okay, come on, let's get there, let's figure it out. We got there to the hospital. We checked in. They sent me to a room where I changed. And the nurse comes in and she tells me, all right, let's check to see what's going on. The way they check you is basically like a pap smear. And they clamps the fluid out and confirmed that my water had been broken. And from there, it had been 5 hours that my water had broke because we got to the hospital at 8 at night and my water had broke at 3:30. So we ended up texting everyone, telling them, hey, you know what, I'm at the hospital. I wasn't dilating, so I didn't really want everybody to come. I just wanted them to wait. It was late at night. I didn't want them to rush, but both their families were very, you know, excited, so they ended up coming to visit. And maybe around 11 or 12, I asked to start jumping on the yoga ball. I kept telling myself, you're going to do this naturally, you got this, you don't need an epidural. So I got on the yoga ball, started bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, and I was getting so many contractions, guys, that I didn't know how I was doing it. And I did get a question actually about how do contractions feel, if they're comparable to anything. To me personally, I cannot compare it to nothing. I cannot compare it to cramps, normal cramps, because they are not normal cramps. I cannot compare it to you having to take the biggest poop of your life, because that's not what it feels like. It is a pain that you cannot compare to anything. At least me personally. I mean, there's a lot of people that are a lot stronger than me and maybe a lot of people that are a lot weaker than me. But me personally, I couldn't I still can't till this day compare it to anything. So going back to my story, the nurse went in and said, hey, you know what, we got to check you, see how if you're dilating. So I got back on the bed, and the way they would check you, basically you cross your legs feet to feet, and they put their whole hand in, check to see if you're dilating. At that point I was 3 centimeters dilated. After she checked me, guys, my world like collapsed. I started twirling in the bed. I started grabbing the bar from the bed, like literally crying to Tanner, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I need the epidural right now. So when the nurse came back, I ended up calling the anesthesiologist to do the epidural. He comes in, he does the whole process, leaves, and it might have helped me for like maybe 30 minutes, I want to say. And after that, it was one hell of a fucking ride, because it wasn't helping. And for those mommies that do know, you know, with the epidural, they do have like a little box on the side where like the epidural hangs and everything works from there. The nurse came in and kept telling me, there's this button, you're going to keep pressing it and pressing it and pressing every time that you get a strong contraction and you can feel it. And I kept pressing. At that point, I was like, I think I'm overdue. I think, like, you know, this isn't going to help me. When the nurse came back, I was in so much tears telling her this isn't working. And they ended up having to call the anesthesiologist again to check out what's going on. Turns out that my epidural was put on wrong. They had to switch the whole thing, start all over, poke me back again. And honestly, the epidural, I don't remember the pain of it because of how strong my contractions were, that my mind was just in blank when it came to the epidural. But I could feel my contractions like if I would have never got the epidural. And the contractions began again. I felt them so strong. I felt like nothing was helping me. The epidural wasn't doing its job. And I asked to be checked to see how far dilated I was, because at this point I felt like my son was so low, where you could feel it through your behind and you could feel it through the front. And for those of you that do get super grossed out about these things, I'd really recommend you skip it, because I started from how low Aries was. I started to bleed from both the front and the back. And it was so painful. It was like I kept telling Tanner, like, I need to either take the biggest shit of my life or I need to push, because that's what it felt. And yeah, they checked me. I was 7 centimeters dilated, and the nurse refused to let me push. Reason being that they don't let you push so early is because if the baby does not come out, you're just gonna get so swollen that you're not gonna allow, when you are when you are ready to push, you're not gonna allow for the baby to come out smoothly compared to if you're swollen. And I kept crying, saying I need to push, like there's no way, I just need to, and they wouldn't let me. So they probably kept going, doing their own thing. I was still crying because I was in pain. And the nurse comes back, checks me, still at 7 centimeters, and I wasn't progressing whatsoever. This was probably around either 3 or 4 on Wednesday in the afternoon. And the nurse kind of got a little concerned due to the fact that my water had been broken from 3:30 to 4 in the afternoon, already 24 to 25 hours. There was a concern there because we were risking the fact that myself and the baby could get an infection. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me, because I didn't want to catch an infection myself, and I didn't want to have my son catch an infection himself. And my fever started to rise. My blood pressure was really, really high. They didn't know how to bring it back down. They kept giving me, the Pitocin that they give you, and I wasn't progressing whatsoever. When the nurse got really concerned, she let the doctor know, like, hey, this is what's going on. The doctor came in, offered me a second option, and the option was a C-section. Was I ready for me to have a C-section? No. Did I want one? No. But at that point, it was probably the best thing for myself and for Aries. My body wasn't reacting normal anymore. It was in so much shock that I was cold all the time. I had really, really bad chills. I wanted to sleep. I was so tired. I would literally feel like I was going to pass out. I was just so weak. And they came back in, we signed paperwork, and the doctor said, hey, we're going to start preparing you. They took everyone out. Tanner got ready for him to go in because he did go in. And they got me ready. They take me to prepare me. And when I got there, it's when it hit home because I really don't remember most of it. And they switched me from my normal bed to where they do the surgery, and I was so nervous. I was scared. I didn't really know what to expect from it, and they asked me, hey, do you want to see? Because they put that blind in front of you, and it's either a clear one or it's either a colored one. I just couldn't do it. I was like, my mind was not there whatsoever. I can only imagine me seeing what they were doing to me. Like, there was no way I was going to go through that. So Tanner comes in. They start the process. They told me you're going to feel tugs. You're going to feel like all this craziness going on. I felt some of it, and I started to shake so much, guys, that it literally seemed like I was having a seizure. From all the medicine, from the anesthesia that they numb from. I believe it's I don't know if it's like hip and down. I don't really remember. I don't really know how that one works. But I had so much going on with my body that I just couldn't stop shaking. I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. I was so hungry. I was so thirsty. I was so over it. I just remember looking over at Tanner, and he kept saying, like, you're okay, do you feel that, can you feel that? And my mind was so blank, guys. Like, it was really hard for me. So my son was born on January 30th, 7-pound baby, 14 ounces, at 6:05 in the afternoon. And Tanner went, took pictures, came back to me, showed me the picture, and I literally looked over at the camera, saw the picture, and smiled and started to cry. When Tanner had the baby, I couldn't see him. I turned around to the other side. I started to cry even more. They took Tanner out to the recovery room while they stitched me up. I was ready to go. They switched me over, and my body wouldn't stop shaking. It just couldn't stop. My mind wasn't there anymore. I was not there at all. They took me to the recovery room. I see Tanner with the baby, and I started to cry more because it was a really emotional moment for me. And this is when it really gets tough. For those of you that know what it's like, for those of you that have gone through this, for those of you that have babies, the first thing you want to do when your baby is born is hold him, hold her. And I didn't want to hold my baby. I would see Tanner holding, playing with him, caressing him, and I refused, guys. I refused to hold Aries. And I know for those of you it might sound really, really selfish of me, but honestly it wasn't, because of how much my body was going through with the whole shaking. I just literally, like, I am not kidding you, it was a major seizure. That's what it seemed like. I couldn't seem to hold him, and because of how much in shock that I was, I would hurt him, I would drop him, I would do something that I would regret. And I remember looking over to the nurse, and I kept asking her, hey, give me something to, the ice, I need ice, maybe it's gonna help me. And I kept eating and eating and eating, and I couldn't stop shaking. The nurse kept asking, like, you want to hold him? Tanner kept, insisting I'd hold him. I didn't want to hold him. Tanner still to this day thinks that I didn't want anything to do with the baby. I didn't want to do anything with him anymore. That I went through the pregnancy, had the baby, and I'm over it. I want nothing to do with that whole life of being a mom. But it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. It was just my body was going through so much that I just couldn't seem to hold a baby in that type of stage that I was going through. So it got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. My body had kind of calmed down. I ended up grabbing the baby, ended up feeding him, and ended up taking him out because they had to give him antibiotics due to him. He didn't get the infection, but they didn't want to risk the fact of him actually getting it afterwards. And they took him most of the day. We were there at the hospital for 4 days. All 4 days, the baby kept leaving us, kept going to the nursery to receive his medication. I kept receiving antibiotics for the same reason, just to not risk the fact of us getting that infection. So it was really, really hard. My whole labor, it was 27 hours. From the moment that my water broke to the moment that I had him, it was 27 hours. Would I do it again? Absolutely. I would have Aries all over again, and I still want more babies. Does it suck that I had a C-section? Yes, of course it does. I do have a scar in my stomach. Thankfully, you can't see it, which I am not ashamed at all. I love my scar, and yes, sometimes I look at it and it makes me really emotional just because it reminds me a lot of the moment that I went, with having Aries. And I love my mom body. I am smaller, way smaller than I was before when I got pregnant. So that's my only issue, is that I can't seem to gain my weight back. And Aries is now 4 months. He's doing really good. He takes baby steps with the help of me or Tanner. He sits up by himself sometimes. He'll actually lean forward and sit up. He likes to sit in his baby chair. He likes to make a mess with his food. He is really, if you can hear him, he has been screaming this whole time. He is loud. And honestly, it has been the best thing to ever happen to me, is having Aries. And for those moms that are expecting, I by no means want you to rely on my video to get scared by thinking that your labor is going to go the exact same way that mine went, because it is not. No labor is the same. And when they tell you I was in and out, and another mom will tell you I was in and out, both in and outs were different. Because it is really true, no labor is the same. And for those moms that have gone through labor will maybe somehow understand what I went through. But like I said, I really do not want anybody to rely on my story to be like yours if you're the one expecting. For those moms that are wanting babies, you will get there. You will have your own little story to tell later on, and it is the most beautiful thing in the world. And I really do wish all you mommies that are expecting or that will soon, have their kids, I really do wish you guys all the best. I'm actually gonna go get him and introduce him to you guys. Sean! You gotta meet somebody, dude. You have to meet all the friends. Say hi! Alright guys, this is Aries Ray. He is, like I said, 4 months. He is a crazy baby. He moves a lot. Come on, dude. Stream. Oh, and he drools a lot. He doesn't stop drooling. And he is my little... He's my little precious crazy little boy. Hi, son. Say hi. Oh, he's looking at that side. He's watching himself. Oh, excuse you. Excuse you. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. That is when in labor, my story time, all of that. I will continue to be doing Instagram polls, questions. If you guys are interested in being part of it, I will have my information down in the description bar so you guys can go follow me and be part of it. And hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way they can notify you guys when we upload a video. Really do hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and we will be seeing you guys in our next video. Say bye! Bye guys.